Hey, what's up, everybody? This is my first video ever, my first video series ever. I'm currently sitting in my first van I built. This series is going to be about my second van. It's a 2024 Ford Transit 350 HD all-wheel drive EcoBoost. That's a mouthful. My first van build wasn't very conventional. My next one's not very conventional. I'm actually sitting below my bed in the front of the van, if that tells you anything. This series is going to be about the next build, and I'm hoping some of you can learn something along the way. I know I will. I've learned a lot from YouTube as well. So yeah, I'm just wanting to contribute to the community. And yeah, let's get into this. So what was week one? So starting with the outside, I have a 2024 Transit. So as the new facelift that happened in 2020, as the new style grill that has a bunch of different options for if you want to upgrade to a Transit style grill. Um, I guess the install was pretty simple. To take the stock grill off, I just used this cheap Amazon panel removing tool that you can just put in between the bumper and the grill itself, and just using a little bit of force to separate it. You can then start pulling each tab off and separating the grill from the bumper. Um, Once that's done, the one thing that got me was the Ford logo here. The oval and the stock one is actually clipped into the, I guess it's a subframe or whatever here. So when you're removing it, just note that, like, even though all the clips are off, it's not going to want to give. You're going to have to pull it. I almost dropped my stock grill on the floor, and that would have sucked. So hopefully that helps someone. As far as like the wiring is concerned, these were a little tricky. You can't use these as cavities because the bumper itself um, actually protrudes into the grill. And it's, at least for me, it was easy to make that mistake when I had it on the ground, trying to like figure out the wiring and how I was going to make it clean. I went to like put the bumper on, and then I realized that that was the case. So I ended up running these down, and to make it as clean as possible, I drilled a hole, an 1/8 inch hole here, and then just zip tied the wires to follow the lines of the honeycomb pattern here. And yeah, basically at that point, they all converge here with these that go up this way, and then they go behind the headlight here. I don't have them wired up yet, but I think I'm going to wire them up to the marker lights, the relay for that. I'll go into that whenever I get to it and tell you guys what I did. But the other thing I did was the Baja Designs Squadron fog lights here. Basically, to do this, for me, I didn't have fog lights. So what I needed to do first was I needed to get a bracket, obviously, which you need to do for any fog light upgrade if you're going to do something like this. Owl Designs has a really good priced, or a really well priced option for the bracket. It's a powder coated, I think, aluminum or something bracket that fits perfectly and then works with these perfectly as well. It's like 140 or 150 bucks. And then this is just off of Amazon, the shroud here. The stock one, obviously, for me, didn't have even a cutout. And you can use the stock one because it has the same, like, I guess, basically channels here that you can use for cutting guides or whatever. Because that's all you're doing is you're using the stock, like, I guess, channels here. That's not the term, but the point is like you're just following these lines, I guess, on the shroud and using that as a cutting guide. But I didn't want to cut my stock ones. I got these off of Amazon for like 20 bucks or something. I can link it below. Yeah, and I can link the grill as well. I got it off of eBay, like I said. When I bought it, there was one left after I had purchased mine. So hopefully they still sell them. I assume they will, but if I can find it again and if it's still for sale, I'll post it below. And again, like, in my opinion, this is the best looking one. But anyways, back to this. These aren't wired up. I don't even know what the OEM wiring looks like, or the switch for that matter. I don't know if it's on the steering wheel or what, but again, that'll be for a later episode. But the only thing, I guess, the last thing I'll say about this is I don't like the openness. It's cool, I guess, if you're, for the industrial look. But the problem is the elements are going to just get in there, dirt, grime, water, I mean, everything behind your bumper. And I really don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to 3D scan and make a product that completes this. It's either going to replace this whole shroud here, or it's just going to be an inset that makes it to where it's at least a little more watertight. I'm going to make it for my van, and if someone wants to buy it, they can, but that'll be on my site, greyduckvans.com. But yeah, so that's like, I guess, it for the exterior for week one. Moving on to the interior. So week one was about the, I guess, starting the sound deadening insulation, and I'm just using something called Ag Sound off of Amazon. I didn't get like Dynamat or whatever, but it is a mini cell closed cell foam, so it's not going to grow mold, and it's safe to have against the van walls. So I did that on every panel. It's not pretty, but one thing I had as far as like an issue with it is I would cut it perfectly to the width, and then when I would take the adhesive backing off, it would shrink. So a lot of these weird waves are like me having to stretch it back to like cover the area that I was trying to. But anyways, the other thing I did was I wanted to test these L brackets for 80/20. So faroutrides.com, they're great. I'm sure you've found them by now, but if you haven't, they're a great resource. They do great write-ups that are easy to follow, and they do a ton of research in everything that they do. But in addition to that, they also give back to the community. And one thing that they have are these jigs that you can download for $3 and print yourself. So I downloaded it, and theirs was made to actually have these L brackets go in between just an inch channel of 80/20, right? But I'm doing 2x4s because what theirs was actually intended for was, it was on their write up for actually a bed platform. So they actually mounted their bed to this frame, for lack of a better term, and have it actually 80/20 to the actual chassis itself. I took that and then I modified it. I'm actually printing a better one now, but and then I modify it to be the width of what a 2x4 will be when it's sideways. And then as far as like cutting it, this is 35 degrees. And then the top, I believe, was 20 degrees. And then that just fits snug in there. I actually have some more of this foam in between the board itself. You can sort of see the gap there. On the top and the bottom as basically another barrier of insulation and to keep it from rattling. And then felt underneath these, again, for more insulation. As far as like putting the bolts in, I would suggest using stainless steel and then using Loctite on all these. So, because the last thing you want is this thing coming loose while you're driving after years and having to take off your wall. As far as like how to actually mount it to the van, I would suggest, if you're going to go my route, using something called a rivet nut. And if you don't know what that is, it's these like magical little things here that, for the 1/4 inch nut, which is what most 10 series 80/20 or aluminum extrude uses for their nuts, for like their L brackets and stuff. What you need to do is you need to drill a 3/8 inch hole in the van. And that's why you need the jig, right? So this jig has holes in it that are perfectly placed, so you can be very precise with your drilling, and so that's exactly placed where it needs to be. So if you don't know what a rivet nut is, basically I found actually the van has a lot of 3/8 inch holes, so I don't need to drill a hole to show you this. This goes in, and then you can either get a manual tool or you can get this on Amazon, which I was a little skeptical because it's $150. But this thing, if you're going to be doing a lot of rivet nuts like this, I'm actually going to probably be using rivet nuts everywhere now, mainly because I've found these holes, and I'm going to actually use these holes to actually mount my wall to the van now, instead of actually using sheet metal screws, which I absolutely hate. As far as week one, going back to that, and I was just, trying to get this framing at least prototype to make sure it would work, and it's worked great. So that's obviously week two is going to be working on the rest of that. And then the last and final piece is the wiring harness, which, I is probably the most important part of this video. If you have a Transit or a Ford Transit, or you're buying one, or you're looking into it, eventually or already, you're going to notice that there's this really annoying channel that goes down the length of the van, and then goes up, and then kind of over the rear doors. Now, if you're wanting to put cabinets up or walls, that's obviously going to be in the way. So there's two different things you can do. One is you either splice and cut the wiring harness in half, which there's like 50 strands. If you're going to do that, just know what you're doing. I did that on my first van. Probably want to solder it, or safer way is probably to get butt connectors. Either way, you just want to make sure that it's going to last the rest of the lifespan of the van, because the last thing you want is electrical gremlins, which is why it's intimidating, right? So yeah, that's what I did on my first van. I wouldn't suggest it, especially on a 2024, because there's a lot more wires going to the rear of the van for like sensors and stuff. The only other option is to actually start by unplugging everything. And I guess starting from this side, what you need to do is you need to unplug the wiring harness that goes lengthways here, and then remove the step out here. Remove the rear brake light on both sides, but starting on this side, remove the brake light. Don't remove this, just unplug it. The wiring harness, it's actually probably one of these. So you don't have to mess with this. And then just basically start unplugging everything, undo the 3 grounding points there. And then going down here, what you have to do, which is the real fun part, is you actually have to pry this entire panel. First, you have to take this off. This just kind of pinches off. And then pry this entire panel back. Don't remove it fully, but have it kind of like flapping. And I'll I'll include the time lapse of this in this video so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. But once you have this pried away, this gives you access to the it's kind of like a one-way valve. So when you close your car door or the van doors, it doesn't blow out your eardrums. It has to push the air out somewhere, so it goes out these one-way valves that happen to be behind this. You can actually remove those. Yeah, it's easier to like push the pins down from the inside with like a long screwdriver versus trying to pry them, because there's like a really tight seal on it. You don't want to mess with it. But the point is, once you remove that box, and be careful removing it, you have access to the plugs behind it, and then that gives you access to unplug the plug that then goes to what I think is the LiDAR sensor here, and then a proximity sensor here, and then obviously it goes, well, not obviously, but it also goes all the way through this rear bumper channel to the driver's side. There's like a few plugs, you just unplug them, and you just leave this kind of dangling and hanging there for the remainder of this. Don't worry about like putting it back right away. But once you have that, and then you just work your way up, and then pull off the channel, that's the plastic channel here, and then just pull the wiring harness up, and then unplug your rear brake light that's here, and your rear view camera. And then once you have that, and then you can just remove it, and then kind of do the same thing on this side. You don't have to remove the outside panel. It's just on the passenger side. But you need to unscrew the 3 ground points there, remove the rear brake light, which is a little tricky. I should have mentioned that earlier. It's 2 or 3 bolts And then the clips that go in, it feels like you're going to break the brake light when you're removing it. Just be kind of careful when you're removing it, and obviously don't drop it because that would suck. But point is, you do have to remove the brake lights to get to the wiring harness, and then remove it from the brake light and set it down somewhere safe, and then move your channel or move the wiring all the way up the wall here. And then I'll get into this in a sec, but basically at this point, then you're kind of free to just pull all the wiring harness back this way. And once you're over here, now you're going to have like a wiring harness kind of on the ground here. And you're going to be like, what the hell have I done? But the point is you're probably 60% the way there. And you're probably like an hour or two into this project. But the good news is now you get to start putting things back. And to me, that feels better. So starting here, I'm moving mine up. My first van, I actually moved it down. I don't know if that's really smart with because my first van didn't have side impact airbags. Anyways, I'm choosing to go up. So basically, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make the blob work with that new channel. But and then yeah, just start working through the channel here of the frame. I've seen some people actually use a hole saw, like a 2-inch hole saw is what you need. If you were to look at the BEMM, which is, I'm just going to call it the BEM from this point on my channel, which is a really important manual to download. And it's awesome that Ford even has it. It gives you all the information of what you should be modifying and what you shouldn't be. Like I see people cutting these all the time and I'm like, what are you doing? This is like, you want to keep this. You can only cut in between this. But the point is the BEMM or BEM, I already broke my promise, but the BEM will tell you these things. But you're not supposed to probably modify this, which is why I chose to pull it out. That and I didn't want to deal with a hole saw. But the point is like you're not supposed to be, messing with any structural frame of the van, right? Is it going to cause an issue if you get in an accident? Probably not. But the point is I chose to just make it pop out here. And that's, a decision you need to make based on, your layout, if you're going to have cabinets there or whatever. But when I was routing it the rest of the way here, I chose not to put it on top for obvious reasons. You don't want your harness like kind of like jiggling and then cutting through the insulation. It's just obviously not a good idea. So I use zip ties, or they're hanging by zip ties, and then I have zip ties in the middle, pulling it down to keep it from wiggling. And then obviously with the insulation in there, hopefully that'll help keep it in place as well. Keep going, or once you keep going all the way here, now the way the stock harness routes is it comes out and then back in through this plastic channel piece here. For obvious reasons, I don't want that. I'm trying to obviously get rid of this as much as I can for a flat wall. So I just cut an inch channel here and then wrapped the harness enough in this foam that it wouldn't move. And then I basically, this is like an inch channel here that I cut, but then I put the plastic piece back on to also like kind of keep it in place. And then, yeah, I guess Bob's your uncle. You just like start plugging and screwing everything back in. And then again, the channel was on the outside here before, but you want to just route it back into the frame, plug it into the rear view, or sorry, the rear brake light, and then your rear camera, and then work your way back down, and then start plugging everything back in and putting your panels back on, and then yeah, then you're done. It's not that bad, right? I try to tell myself that. I mean, it took me probably like 4 hours to do. If I were to do it again, maybe I could do it quite a bit quicker, but it's just a lot of tedious work. Obviously, I forgot to mention unplug your battery before you do it because you don't want to short anything out. Plus, you don't know what your ECU or the van's computer is going to be doing if it's like sensing, even though it's off, but if it's like sensing like sensors being unplugged and stuff, it might freak out. So it's just a good idea to unplug the positive terminal on your battery. And yeah, so that's kind of it. That's how I did the rear wiring harness relocation. It wasn't that bad. And I think it's probably the safest way to do it. And it gives you all this area here now, with the exception of a few spots. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the antenna there, but with the exception of a few spots, now you have flat wall space. So it sucks that we have to do it, but I get why Ford does it, because I spent hours having to route the harness myself. It's a lot easier just to have it on clips on the outside, but I digress. Anyways, hopefully some of that was helpful. Hopefully, someone starting out that's needing to reroute their wiring harness or change their grill, hopefully that'll help a little bit. But yeah, until I guess next week, peace.